Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to turn the lens around a little bit on demographics to look at things from the inside out, to look at them from your point of view. And I've been a student of purpose and the power of purpose now for 4 decades. Purpose basically is this: what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning? What really makes you want to get up and go to work, get up and do whatever you do? I find in my own research that 1 out of 3 people today doesn't have a clear reason to get up in the morning. So just take a look at the person on your left for a minute and see if they look like they've got a good reason to get up. If they look pretty good, look at the person on your right. So if the people on either side of you both look pretty grounded, then it's you're the 1 out of 3. So the point is this. The point is that purpose is fundamental. It's not just a luxury. It's not just a nice-to-have thing. The science of purpose today shows that purpose is essential to longevity, on average living 7 years longer, to health, to healing, to happiness, and ultimately to our productivity, what we do all day at work. So I'd like to spend a few minutes helping you or offering you some ideas of unlocking your own sense of purpose. I am a student of story. You've heard stories up here today. And this is the old story. It's kind of the story that Wally grew up with, and it's the story that I grew up with. You've heard has anyone ever said you're over the hill, or you've said to somebody else you're over the hill? This is the hill that they were talking about. And what happens for many people is the bottom of the model here shows youth and adolescence and midlife and older. But the vertical axis is all about growth, about discovery, about curiosity in certain ways. I grew up with a model that was grow up and grow old and decline at a certain age. And it was because we didn't live that long, oftentimes. The longevity revolution wasn't alive and well. We didn't have these extra 3 decades. And so I've been interviewing elders over the age of 65 for many, many years. And I've asked them if they could live their life over again. You know, people who are on the downside of the curve or the backside of the curve, if they could live their life over again, what would they do differently? And there's 3 themes that have come out over and over again over many years of research. Number 1, they said if they could live their life over, they'd be more reflective the second time around. They'd step back and look at the big picture. And I said, well, when did you do that? And it was often during a crisis. I don't know how it is for you when you push the pause button and turn off your phone and step back and look at the big picture. But it's often when we have to, when we're pushed by pain to do it. And so this event is about reflection, pushing the pause button, stepping back and looking at the big picture in many ways. And secondly, they said if they could live their life over again, they would take more risks the second time around. I actually grew up in a very conservative banker family. And we didn't talk a whole lot about risk and our courage. We talked more about security, which is a good thing. There's a good balance between that. But why do people say they wish they would take more risks? The reason is this. It wasn't about money risks, and it wasn't about physical risks. It was about personal risks at work and in relationships. Being more authentic. I wish I would have brought more of myself, my voice, into the world in certain ways. That's where I get the juice. That's where I get the joy, is at work and in relationships. The third theme they said if they could live their life over again is they wish they would have understood this whole sense of purpose and meaning in life. That at the end of life, every single person in this room wants their life to matter. You've all heard Steve Jobs, after he died and before he died and gave his speech at Stanford, say, I never wanted to be the richest man in the graveyard. I just wanted to make a dent in the universe. Well, he might have been both, but the point is that we all want to make our lives to matter. It's fundamental to our DNA as human beings. So here's the news story. The news story looks like that. You've already seen the numbers. People have spread that out, but now we have, in the early 1900s, the average life expectancy was 46 or 47. Now it's actually in the 80s. The fastest growing cohort in the United States is 85 and over. So the longevity revolution is alive and well for many people. So that blue zone, if you look at it there, that new life stage, those 3 decades, what are those about? Many of us might live longer during that period of life than we did in what classically was considered our productive years. Are we going to continue to grow and evolve. Research on happiness and positive psychology shows that this phase of life, you see the curve goes down for a while there is something called a midlife crisis. But it's not really a crisis, it's a meaning crisis. It's a fundamental look at where we've been and where we're going, that period of reflection. And then it goes up, and these are happy times in life in many ways. I did a talk in Houston a while back, and there was someone sitting in the front row, and I looked at his name tag. It was really interesting. It was Dr. Joseph Schmidt II, MD, U.S. Space Program. And I said to him during a break, it was a two-part program, I said, Dr. Schmidt, are you an astronaut? Because I said Johnson Space Center, and he said, no, I'm the chief of internal medicine for the astronauts and their families at the Johnson Space Center. I thought, that's pretty impressive. What are you doing here? I'm talking about this second phase of life and everything. And he looked at me, and he appeared to be about 40, about the median age here at Allianz. And he said, well, Mr. Leider, the reason I'm here is, what would you tell people to do in the second half of their life when they'd walked on the moon in the first half? I laughed. He didn't. He said, this is a serious deal. People need to reimagine their lives at different phases, no matter whether they've walked on the moon, whether they've been a CEO, whatever their work is in life, a homemaker, a caregiver, or whatever. We all need to continually reimagine our lives along the way. So the key question here is not the old story and not the new story. As I said, I'm here to talk about your story. So what is your mindset? What is your mental map, your mindset about your own life? There's 3 M's to consider, and they've already been talked about. The 3 M's are money, medicine, and meaning. We need enough money to last the journey. We need enough. Medicine is code for health. We need that. And we need meaning. You all know people who have enough medicine and enough money, but are unhappy or whose life isn't working in certain ways. So we need all 3. Let me share a very personal story about me. As I said earlier, sometimes we reflect when we're pushed by pain, sometimes when we're pulled by possibility. I got a call. I was giving a talk a while, maybe 10 years ago, and somebody walked, this is before real mobile phones were available, and someone walked right up to the stage, gave me a pink slip, and said, call home right now. And I said, you mean right now in the middle? And they said, yes. And so I called home. I took a break, gave the group a break. I called home, and my wife said, Richard, your mother has had a stroke. She's in St. Joseph's Hospital over in St. Paul, Minnesota, in intensive care. She's not going to make it through the night. You better come home. Now, she had breast cancer and breast cancer surgery a decade earlier. She was doing quite well, actually, I thought, but this didn't look good. So I drove home, and I got to the hospital at about 11 o'clock at night. And you know, when you're in a situation like that, you get in the car, the sun looks different, the music sounds different. You know you're going to face, you get a lot of flashbacks on your life. I walked in, and the nurse took me into the intensive care unit. The rest of my family wasn't around. And my mother was in a coma or was unconscious and taking deep breaths, really deep, slow breaths. I didn't know what to do, so I just lost it. And then I decided that the only thing I really could do is thank her. So I got up on the bed, and I picked her up, and I only said 2 things to her. I said, Mom, I think it's time to go. Thank you. And when I said thank you, she opened her eyes, and she took 2 more breaths, and she died right there in my arms. And I tell you this very personal story because you've all got your own stories and ultimately your own legacies. But this purpose thing I'm talking about here, it doesn't weigh anything. You can't always see it in other people, but you know it when you're around someone who's not self-absorbed when they're about you and about them in certain ways. Every human being wants their life to matter. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, like Wally's, and she, I think, needed completion at the end, that her life mattered. So is it with all of us in certain ways. So let's look a little bit more at what are the 3 components that'll help unlock the power of purpose. The three, I call them the three C's, if you will. The first C is choice. Everybody has a choice in life. Oftentimes these choices are smeared over with hurry sickness. We're always on our computers and on our phones. We're always going somewhere, never being anywhere. And so choices often are pushed by pain. One of the people I met, you've all had fortuitous encounters with other people. One of the people I met was Viktor Frankl. Any of you here know who Viktor Frankl was? He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. The Library of Congress says there are 10 or 12 books that have seriously influenced American history and American thought, and one of them is his book, Man's Search for Meaning. That's his number. He was number 119104 in a Nazi concentration camp. He was a Viennese psychiatrist, neurologist, thinker on purpose and behavior and health. And he was taken at the height of his work, and he was in 3 concentration camps. He was liberated from those 3, but his family was not. His family died. His pregnant wife died, his siblings, his parents, his others in his family. He weighed 87 pounds when he got out of Auschwitz. He went back to Vienna. He healed, and he sat down and wrote Man's Search for Meaning in 9 days. And what I learned from him, I got out of graduate school in 1968 when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I was trying to figure out, as counseling, psychology, graduate school, I was trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And I found out that a guy I'd studied, Viktor Frankl, was doing a week-long seminar in San Diego. So I scraped enough money together. I went down, I spent a week with him. It was a fortuitous encounter. It changed the rest of my life. And so what I learned from him and what Man's Search for Meaning, and the message here is this. The last of the human freedoms is choice. It's to choose what you want your life to be about that day, regardless of the circumstances. And he talked about people getting up and giving somebody else in the concentration camp a kind word, a hug, a crust of bread, helping give them hope for the future. So when we look at choice, the question is, why do you get up in the morning? What is your choice? What is your mindset? What is your life about? What are you trying to do here? What's the point of the exercise ultimately? E.B. White, the American essayist, said this: I arise in the morning, torn between a desire to save the world and a desire to savor the world. This makes it hard to plan the day. Well, in all due respect to E.B. White, it makes it easier to plan the day, because a great life is one of savoring and saving. And saving, I don't mean in a literal sense of saving the planet, although for some that may be it, but it's offering our gifts to the world in certain ways. So if you are having a little bit of struggle with the purpose thing, let me give you a default purpose right now. Tonight when you go home, write this default purpose on a Post-it and put it on your mirror. Grow and give. That's it. That's the essence of my message in purpose. Grow and give. You have to grow in order to have something to give. But if you put a post on your mirror and say, this morning, how am I going to grow and how am I going to give? And at the end of the day, you look at, how did I grow and how did I give today? I guarantee you, it won't take you 30 days, like the video you saw. Within a week, you'll have a pretty good sense of your reason for getting up in the morning and your purpose. The second C is curiosity. Curiosity. This particular slide came because I actually was backstage a while back with the founder of TED, Richard Saul Warman, and he was going to give a talk on curiosity, and I was going to give a talk on purpose, and he asked me, what are you going to talk about? And I told him, and then he said, you must be pretty curious with the research you do. And I said, so he handed me a banana, and he said, you go to Africa all the time, I hear, and you take trips to Africa and people to Africa. Here, try this banana. So I started to peel the banana, how do you do it? My thumb in there and get the, and he laughed and he said, you aren't very curious. Flip the banana like the chimps do and peel it from the other end. So to this day, I peel a banana from the bottom, not from the top. So that's a lesson learned for you here today. What's the point of the exercise? The point of the exercise is purpose is unlocked by people who are curious. Curious about themselves, curious to grow, curious about the world around them in certain ways. Curiosity is about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, looking at things through a different angle. Isn't that what we're trying to do here as we look at demographics, to look at things from a different angle? And I'm asking you to look at it from the inside out. So why do you stay up at night? What keeps you up at night? What are you curious about? How do you want to grow? That's another part of curiosity. The final C is courage. And the courage to really live an authentic life, to live your vision, your version of the good life. So let me give you the formula that I've been studying now for the last 4 decades. And I call it the napkin test. I actually call it the Got a Minute School of Career Coaching. Because in a world where people are busy all the time, and you do the kind of work I do, people will say to me, "You got a minute? Can you tell me what I ought to do with the rest of my life?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a minute, but if you've got a minute, write this down on a napkin." So at the reception, you can write this down on the napkin if you don't have one now. The formula is gifts, the G, plus passions or purpose, the P, plus values, the V, equals C, calling. Do you have a job that you have to pull yourself out of bed to get to every day? Or do you have a career that's going to pay off or do you have a calling? A calling is where you line up who you are with what you do. And to Sarah's point earlier, you bring more of who you are through the door and engage more. Are you using your gifts on things you feel passionate about in environments that fit your values? That is what a life of engagement and purpose really looks like. So that's the formula that's been tried and true. It's been tested in almost all the career development research around the world. You can read books about careers. We can talk about whether you're a millennial or a X or a Y or whatever. To me, this is the core. Are you using your gifts, the things you love to do that your hand naturally turns to, on things you really care about in environments that really fit your values? The values part of it. One of the things I love about, and it's my first visit to Allianz, hopefully not my last, but first visit and seeing that you're a Fortune 100 company and seeing that culture matters, and with what Walter and Jay have been talking about. And so the opportunity to really engage and bring those gifts forward in a culture that values and wants to hear a voice. There are all kinds of microclimates here, but let me end by this. Last thing, purpose basically is fundamental. Fundamental, as I said. So final thing, I've been going to Africa a long time. I'm sitting around the fire with an elder in Africa. And he asks me this. He said, "Richard, do you know what the 2 most important days in your life are?" And this, by the way, is a tribe in Africa that's been around for tens of thousands of years. It's the hunter-gatherer tribe that they're doing the genome project on and indigenous studies. So he says, "You know what the 2 most important days are?" And I said, "Sure, birth and death." And he goes, "Oh, geez, you came all the way over here in an airplane, you came out here in a Land Rover, you write these books about this. I'm 80 years old," he says, "and I haven't never been more than 25 kilometers from where we are here." And he said, "The answer is this in our culture. The 2 most important days are the day you're born and the day you decide or you determine why you're here." That's the power of purpose. That's the fundamental message. So thank you very much.